Let me begin by mentioning what Pradeep had mentioned on my behalf in the opening session, that in the Competition Commission internally, and also when we were in global forums and talking about what does competition achieve, what are the benefits, does it really give the kind of benefits that we talk about theoretically and conceptually, and that some other countries have done these exercises in fair amount of detail, which Pradeep knows about. So in the Competition Commission some time ago, we went into this virgin territory and said that we should do impact assessment, at least from the competition point of view, which is the job of that regulator. And the Commission issued guidelines on competition assessment of legislation and bills. And the idea was that the Commission will have a panel of expert institutions to conduct competition impact assessments to be able to gauge what is the competition dynamics of laws. Are they really achieving the market-friendly objectives or not? We'll have to see how that exercise plays out, because it's easier said than done. Firstly, it will be done by external bodies. The Commission will consider it, and then, of course, logically, it will have to be conveyed to the various ministries in terms of what is the study, and then, of course, it's up to the government and the lawmakers to decide what to do with it. So that brings us this small sort of exercise brings us to consider what should we be doing in terms of RIAs in India to start with. I mean, there's no doubt that regulatory impact assessments need to be done, that they serve a whole lot of useful objectives, maximizes welfare without sort of imposing unnecessary burden and cost and so on and so forth. But if we try and tackle the entire universe, which is what ideally we should be doing, and maybe at the end of the day we should be getting there. But if we look at laws, if we look at rules, regulations, as Ajay mentioned, I think the system will be getting into a kind of chakravyuh, which I'm not very sure whether we are equipped to handle at this stage or not. The other point, I mean, in terms of how the process is carried forward, the legislative process is carried forward, at least in relation to new laws. And I'm not talking of the baggage of laws that exist and which may also need to be looked at, perhaps. But in respect of new laws, the laws go through a fairly, and Ajay himself mentioned the standing committees, and the parliamentarians have their views, and they should ideally be looking at whether it really serves the purpose or doesn't serve the purpose, and maybe in some sense, qualitatively at least, use that to decide what will be the impact of the kind of law that they are passing. At least that's my view, that we should ideally begin by focusing on the regulators who have been given fairly wide powers by Parliament to look after their individual sectors. Even in the regulatory space, whatever little knowledge that I have, would lend me to believe that the scope for regulations really impacting the regulated entities in a much wider manner through regulations, not through the law. I'm not talking of the law, but of the regulations, is probably the impact of the severity can be much more on the financial sector regulator side through the regulations. On the other regulators, and there are a large number of them, if there are 8 or 10 on the financial side, there are equal number or so, and perhaps more are coming in on the non-financial side. The regulations essentially indicate the process, and not that the process is always benign. The process also has burdens. It imposes costs, etc. But that's the kind of impact that the regulations have, and that itself will be a good starting point to look at in terms of the process, how things can be simplified to ensure that the end objectives of whatever is being done are not very much asymmetrical to what were the objectives which were intended by the lawmakers and given to the regulators to achieve. The third point is capacity of the regulators. I mean, generally there is very little capacity in the field of regulatory impact assessment, as is well known. Everybody is trying to struggle with this, bring out an architecture. I think it's a very good exercise. But within the regulators, I'm not sure how much capacity is really available at this point in time. I mean, there is, in any case, limited capacity even to do their actual jobs of delivering on the laws which Parliament has given to those regulators. But certainly in relation to regulatory impact assessment, I think we have a long way to go. So therefore, basically, my point would be that yes, this is something which is very, very useful, very interesting. Society and people at large, the regulated entities, would be well served by focusing on these issues, but that this has to be a process which doesn't sort of become very, very comprehensive and extensive in its scope right in the beginning. We need to take up certain areas, start there, build up sound models, and then upscale those as we go along. Thank you.